Each year, life offered itself to us in an endless numbers of ways. Each moment comes to us with both hands filled with gifts, opportunities, and adventures, but we only accept a tiny fraction of these exciting possibilities around us. The truth is, most of us are so busy doing what we think we have to do that we never get around to do what we really want to do. My name is Obruche, a PhD student at the University of Sunderland, and in this video, I am going to share 15 tips for surviving your PhD. Honestly, doing a PhD is hard. Some people say a PhD is like a 9-to-5 job. Others say it will cost you a kidney. I say a PhD will leave a scar in your soul. But however you look at it, there are ways to make the journey worthwhile. So let's get started. Tip number 1 is don't work too hard. I wish I hadn't worked so hard is one of the top 5 regrets of the dying, as written by Bronnie Ware. Always remember, it's a PhD and it's not even a Nobel Prize. There will always be work to be done, and there is never going to be enough research. The primary purpose of your PhD is to push the boundaries of knowledge a bit further by finding a novel way to answer your research questions. You can't do everything, so don't push yourself too hard that you forget to look after yourself and your health, which is very important. Always remember, you're more important than your PhD. Sometimes, spending time away from your research can be the most positive thing you can do when you're feeling stressed. This takes me to tip number 2, which is making out time for your family, friends, and your health. During your PhD, there will be a time when you will be into your research and you will almost forget about everything else. Being guided by your highest values will bring you massive satisfaction and meaning to your life. These values include family, friends, and your health. Make time for these things because these are the values that gives us deeper satisfaction. Catch up with your old-time friends every once in a while. Again, in the book, Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, according to Bronnie Ware, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. It's one of the top 5 regrets of the dying. People often don't realize the full benefits of old-time friends until their dying days, so don't let golden friendship slip. Start by thinking of your life as a wheel with many different spokes. To have a balanced life, each of these spokes need your attention. Tip number 3 is lead your own research. You have to lead your own research and be the CEO of your research enterprise. Take leadership of your research project and come up with ideas and solutions. You don't have to depend too much on your supervisors. Making sure you know what to do when they are not available for months or maybe longer is one of the reasons why it is called an independent study in the first place. So try to assess and improve your emotional intelligence and self-awareness. Recognize how your attitude and action come across to others. Maybe imagine after a month or so without meeting with your supervisor, and he or she finally reach out and asks you for some updates on your research. Now, depending on your response, he or she will be able to tell if you're really leading your research, and that speaks volume. Because when you give a good report, you'll get a good feedback, and that is how you succeed. If you fail to lead your research, your supervisor is not going to do it for you. Taking the lead in your research is a leadership skill that will help you in future. This takes me to tip number 4, which is knowing when to put extra effort in your research. Setting milestone is one way to track your research. This helps you to put in extra effort to meet those milestones. Don't wait until you have major deadlines to get your research up to date. I know this is a little bit difficult, especially when you have to update your literature review regularly. I do struggle with this aspect of my research and I am aware of my shortcomings. So I try to make efforts to get things done without procrastinating. And when I have major deadlines, I try to put in extra effort to meet those deadlines. It's your responsibility to know when to put in extra effort, and you will be able to know only when you keep track of your progress. Getting things off the ground will also create space for regular breaks that you will need each day. This takes me to the next tip, which is taking enough breaks during your work days. As a researcher, remember to take enough breaks because most of the time you will be sitting in front of your desk or in a lab for hours doing research. So don't skip your lunch break. For me, outside lunch break, I always walk around campus just to get some fresh air and maybe spend some time with nature. Since St. Peter's campus is just by the river, I do sometimes walk around the river. This always keeps me motivated. As a researcher, you have to create time for yourself to have those little breaks. It is good for your physical and mental health because at the end of the day, you are responsible for your well-being and to some extent to the pace of your research. Talking about taking enough break, this takes me to tip number 6, which is finding a routine that works for you. At the beginning of my research, my supervisor told me to take my PhD as a day job. So on my own, I decided to resume early and finish anytime past 4 p.m. This means if I am productive on any particular day, I stayed beyond 4 p.m. This creates enough time for me in the evenings for other activities that I would want to engage in. So finding a routine that works best for you is a key factor towards completing your PhD. Now, finding a routine that works for you also involves knowing when you are more productive. This takes me to tip number 7, which is making out time for deep work. Getting a good slot of time to sort out some critical aspect of your research. This could be a dedicated time in the morning or afternoon when you have undivided attention. You need this time for deep work on your research. This could be reading up journals, updating your literature review, working on your methodology, and finding that originality to your research. Making out time for deep work will give you a sense of fulfillment concerning your research. It will also give you that freedom of making out spare time for things outside your research or things outside academic. This takes me to tip number 8, which is picking up a hobby. I like this one. Getting a fulfilled hobby outside your research will help you disconnect completely from your research, which is refreshing when you comes back to it. As a researcher, getting a hobby outside your academic life, it's a contributing factor to idea generation and improve problem-solving strategy. For me, I choose photography and videography as it gives me fulfillment outside my research. There are lots of options to choose from learning how to play musical instruments to gardening, fishing, cycling, running. The list goes on and on. So find something that stirs up your creative juice. A PhD is boring enough. You don't want to be a boring researcher. Trying to make your PhD less boring takes me to the next tip, which is tip number 9, attending conferences. Now, If you can get funding from your department, get out of your university and learn from the rest of the world by attending conferences. This is a place where you can meet and make professional friends. Alternatively, if you can't secure funding, you can apply to be a volunteer in some of those conferences within your field of study. I remember attending US Life Conference in London. I was able to connect with key players in the US field, and I met some LinkedIn friends physically, and that was an amazing experience. Outside learning, conferences gives you a sense of belonging and motivates you to push your research further. This takes me to tip number 10, which is reaching out to the industry. This is of greatest interest to engineering researcher. You need to connect with professionals in the industry. Try to attend conferences where you'll find key players in your industry. Attend workshops where practitioners in your field come together. You can also reach out to practitioners on LinkedIn and request to visit them and have a feel of what is going on in the industry. Although this will be more realistic, hopefully, when things return back to normal. Really, a PhD is not about sitting in front of your computer and reading research paper. You need to find out what is going on in the industry. Now, talking about leaving your computer desk or your lab takes me to tip number 11, which is teaching and supervising students. Teaching outside your PhD will help you learn more and regain a broader knowledge of your research field. Teaching is incredibly rewarding, and so is supervising. Depending on your university, you can apply to teach and also supervise undergraduate students during exams. This sometimes helps you get away from your research and also fetch you some extra cash that you will need along your journey. This takes me to tip number 12, which is reading extensively. It's a good habit to read widely around your topic, but it is also necessary to read outside your research field as a way to gain a broader knowledge and disconnect occasionally from your research. One of the greatest books I have read this year is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Outside that, one of my all-time favorite books is Where Will You Be 5 Years From Today by Dan Zadra. I will leave an Amazon link on the description section if you want to check it out. The 5 book is a good one and it really changed my life. But back to what I was saying, reading outside your field will help you gain knowledge about things outside your research, which is necessary when you finish your PhD, because you don't want to finish a 4 or 5 year PhD and not knowing anything about climate change or sustainable energy or other things outside your research, because some people just dive deep into their research and forget everything else. The last tip on my list is remember why you started this PhD journey in the first place. Yes, we know the future is sending back good wishes and waiting with open arms. But then, where will you be 5 years from today? Are you dreaming big enough? Now, outside the general reason for pushing the boundaries of knowledge, which is the reason why everyone wants to do a PhD, we all have a different reason for pursuing a PhD. Always remind yourself the reason why you started this journey and keep the bigger picture in mind, that at the end of your PhD journey, you have not only contributed to society but also touched dreams. One thing to keep in mind, no one will find out about your research if you don't publish papers. In my opinion, if you're not leaning towards becoming an academia and you don't have any interest in publishing, you can write up a concise report and self-publish it on LinkedIn, where your target audience will be. I think that is better than nothing. So, these are my tips of surviving your PhD. If you have tips to help fellow researchers survive their PhD journey, please share yours in the comment section. And if you have learned something from this video, gently tap the like button so YouTube will show this video to more people. And if you want to see future videos from this channel, kindly tap the subscribe button so you get notification whenever I upload a new video. In my next video, I'll talk about what to look for when choosing a PhD supervisor. Until then, cheers guys, and have a good one. Pas de soleil,